Welcome to another one-on-one. I'm Joel Bacon, and I'm joined in the studio today by a very special guest, Mr. Lance Lyttle, the Managing Director for the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. And as if that job wasn't big enough, he is also the chairman of AAAE's Federal Affairs Committee, guiding us and our organization through the trials and tribulations of Washington. Lance, thank you for taking time during your visit to be with us today.
Thank you for having me here today, Joel.
It's great, and I know you won't want me to embarrass you by doing a deep dive on your bio, but I have to tell you, you did a fabulous interview for Airport Magazine that we're going to include with this video so people can see your background, which is incredibly interesting path to get to be the CEO, the managing director of a major airport. You have degrees in physics, in computer science, management information systems. I have it on good authority that you write poetry and songs, so you're an incredibly...
You have done some research. Huh?
I have, and it's because you're a talented and interesting guy. So we'll encourage people to take a look at the interview we did for the magazine. But in the meantime, let's talk about Washington briefly and spend a little more time talking about what's happening in Seattle with the airport. So,
sure.
As I mentioned, you're our Federal Affairs Committee chair. You're here in Washington, obviously, making the rounds. Talk to us about, in your estimation, what are the biggest issues facing the airport community at Washington today, 2020?
So the biggest one is real easy, and it's PFCs. You know, it's I guess somewhat discouraging that after so many years, we're still arguing for an increase in PFCs. Meanwhile, we're looking at all the airports around the USA, and we're comparing those airports to our counterparts in other countries, and our infrastructure is just sorely in need of upgrades, and we just cannot upgrade these facilities to the level that we'd want without an increase in PFC. So that, to me, is the number one issue right now in Washington, D.C. We really need to have an increase in the PFC, and not only have an increase in the PFC, but to also index it so we don't have to go through this over and over again. So that's the biggest issue. Of course, we have other issues as well. For those who are familiar with it, PFAS, I think, is going to be impacting airports all over the country. I don't think it's a matter of if. Sorry, not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen, and I think we really need to get prepared. Another issue I think that's coming up that is going to be concerning to me, and I guess other folks in the industry, is Real ID. We have a deadline of October 2020 for travelers to have enhanced ID, and I don't think we are ready as yet, and I'm not sure if we're going to be ready come 2020. So that's also a major concern as well.
Those are all things that are impacting the industry writ large.
Industry at large, yes.
Let's hone in a little bit on Seattle. Really interesting airport, dynamic, one of the fastest growing airports in the country. You hit nearly 52 million passengers in 2019. You've had astounding growth on the international front. I think you've doubled over the past decade or so. So the challenges for you, I imagine, are how do you build to accommodate that growth and the growth that you're going to see here over the next decade in a dynamic environment with a community that is really focused on sustainability. I know you're working on the master plan, but just walk us through the challenges you face in getting infrastructure built and running in Seattle.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. The challenge is to find that balance. The balance of building the infrastructure, building the facilities that we need, but at the same time being responsive and addressing the impacts that the airport have on the community, especially our neighboring community. So our approach in terms of the facility, we have a two-prong approach. So we're building a facility that we think we need to meet the growth basically that has already taken place. So we have major projects, international arrival facility that is going to be completed end of this year. We have the North Satellite renovation that's taking place that's going to be completed in 2021. We have our baggage handling system, which is a multiple baggage optimization project that's going to be completed around 2025. All phases, there's maybe about 4 phases. And we have about 100 other projects that's undertaken that's going to upgrade the existing facility, whether it's roadway improvements, new checkpoints, new hold rooms, lounges, etc. that we're building. So that's to take into account the growth that has already taken place. On the long term, we're looking at a 10-year master plan. So what are the facilities that we need to keep pace with the growth that we anticipate or we're forecasted over the next 10 years. And that's where our sustainable aviation, our sustainable airport master plan comes in place. And we're looking at building the required gates, making the airfield improvements, terminal improvement, roadway improvement as part of that master plan process. We're currently in the environmental review phase, and we expect to have the NEPA component of that process completed in October of this year at EA, potentially by the FAA. And then we're doing a parallel SEPA process. We're going to do a full-blown EIS. So our approach is build the facilities that we know we need for the growth that has already taken place, meanwhile plan for the growth that is going to take place over the next 10 years. But at the same time, we have to do it in a sustainable manner. So we have to look at the environmental and social programs that we must implement in order to address the impact that we have on the surrounding neighborhoods.
Yeah, you've hit on one of the key environmental issues with the PFAS. That's one piece of it. You got noise, you've got carbon footprint, emissions. You all have taken a very proactive approach, particularly as it relates to the noise issue. You're using sustainable aviation fuel and dealing with emissions. Talk about your proactive approach on those environmental issues that I think most people agree you're seeing in Seattle, and it's going to be a big issue across the country that can impede future growth for all airports.
So again, we seriously focus on the triple bottom line, right? We know the economic impact of the airport, $22.5 billion in economic impact. So that's one component. But then, as I said, there's the environmental and then the social component. On the environmental side, there's so many things we're doing. We're actually partnering with the airlines right now to look at a strategic plan to develop sustainable aviation fuel, for not only for us, but eventually for the industry. We're putting in electric charging stations, over 300 electric charging stations on the airfield itself to allow the airlines to actually convert from diesel-based equipment over to electric equipment. We have water refill stations within the airport. In the garage, we have over 56 electric charging stations. We have recycling bins all over the airport. We donate 45,000 fresh and open food to the food bank on an annual basis. Wow. Right? We have wetlands, over 112 acres of wetlands. We have planted over 350,000 native trees and shrubs. So there's so many things that we're doing on the environmental side, but we also focus on our social responsibilities as well. Each year, as an example, we hire over 120 interns, and these are paid interns, and we pay them really well. And we expose them to all the career opportunities that exist at the airport and throughout the port of Seattle. We have what's called priority hire, where for major construction projects, we actually prioritize hiring from neighborhoods that are typically considered to be underserved. Neighborhood. We have, for major construction projects, we have what we call, we have quotas for apprentices, apprenticeship quotas as well. We have airport university, where we actually bring college-bearing courses to the airport free of cost to airport employees. We have 500,000 bees. Right? We're trying to increase the honeybee population, and we work very closely with beekeepers. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the social and environmental programs that we have in Seattle. It really is tremendous.
And clearly a priority for you, for your commission, for the community, and something you're obviously...
And one of the things that we're doing that is very important to me is we have a group called START, which is a CTAC advisor roundtable, and it consists of the Port of Seattle, it consists of the airlines, the FAA, and of course our neighboring communities. And we have this group that work together. We have two working groups, a noise working group and a policy working group. And what we're trying to do is, rather than just listen to the complaints and the concerns of our citizens that are in the neighboring community, let's sit together and see how we can actually address the impacts that the airport have, whether it's noise, whether it's pollution, whether it's health impacts. Let's look at practical solutions that we can actually implement to reduce the impact of the airport. And the great thing about this is that we have all the key stakeholders at the table. It's not just, hey, it's us having a conversation with the city, but the FAA is missing, or we're having a conversation with the FAA, but the airlines are missing, so all the stakeholders are there. And it's so far, we have had a lot of challenges, but we have had a lot of successes as well.
That's great to bring everybody to the table, have the discussion,
Yes.
move forward with it. So we've talked about the facility, we've talked about the community. Let's talk about the customer. You have put a big emphasis on a customer-centric approach at the airport. You're unveiling a new program. Tell us about it.
So, when I just started working at the airport, I remember just arriving on the first flight, and I got off the airplane, and I'm walking through the airport, and I was like, what's our brand at this airport? And I didn't have an answer. And so over the last 4 years, I've been really trying to get this off the ground. Fortunately, we have just got our brand campaign, and I must say thanks to Julie Collins, our new customer experience director, who has really spearheaded this along with a whole host of other team members. And we have now launched this brand. And I must again iterate, the brand is not just the logo. So we have a new logo that I have right here, and you'll see the colors changing all over the airport. But the brand is a promise. It's a promise to our customers that when you come to our facilities, here's what you should expect. Here's what you should see. Here is how you should be expected to be treated. Here's the type of service that we should provide to you. Here's the facilities that you should see. And also, it provides guidelines. The brand provides guidelines to our employees. That employees, here's what our customers are expecting, and here's what we expect you to do to meet the needs of our customers. So whether it's the concessions program, whether it's the TSA at the security checkpoints, whether it's Customs and Border Protection or taxi operators, airline operators, we want a consistent way in which we treat all of our passengers and visitors to our airport. And that really is the brand promise. It's not just the logo. The logo is a symbol. When you see this logo, here's what you should expect. Now, we have a long way to go. We're not there yet. We're just starting. But again, the facilities that I spoke about, the International Arrivals Facility, the North Satellite Facility, all the programs we're doing in the Central Terminal with a new ADR, all of those facilities that we're putting in is part of our brand. But also, if you'll see a difference in attitude with our we're called Pathfinders, which is our customer service agents with our volunteers, and you'll see they're far more helpful, right? And that's one of the brand promise that we have, is to be more helpful, to be more efficient, to have that sense of discovery. When you come to the airport, you should be discovering something new at our airport that you had never discovered before. So I'm very excited about our brand, and it's going to take not just our Port of Seattle employees, it's going to take TSA and CBP and taxi operators and airport dining and retail staff, just every member of the airport community to make our brand work.
And that's what's interesting and exciting about it, I presume, is we're not just talking about the airport employees that you have authority over. You're talking about a brand that will be pervasive throughout the entire airport experience. So it rubs off, and you have a culture there at the airport that really focuses on the customer.
Because all it takes is one bad experience anywhere within that airport value chain for a customer to say, had a bad experience. It could be at the taxi, it could be at the airlines, it could be at the concessionaires. So we have to make sure we're all on the same page.
Right. So we have to get you from rainy Washington, D.C. on an airplane to rainy Seattle, Washington.
Thanks for the rain here.
I promise we'll get you out of here. One last question. When you think about your legacy, you've been at Atlanta doing huge development projects. You've been at Houston doing huge capital improvement programs. You're in Seattle doing a huge capital improvement program with a lot of pieces to that. What do you want your legacy to be at Seattle? What do you want to look back on with pride?
Well, it's going to be along the lines that I've mentioned before. I'd like the legacy to be that we were able to find a balance while I was there. And that balance is we're able to continue to grow the airport to meet the needs of the region, to not become the bottleneck for the growth in the region. We're able to provide the level of service, optimal level of service, that we have promised to our customer. We were able to ensure that our employees were engaged and they enjoyed working at the airport. We're able to meet our brand promise to our customer, while at the same time, we're also able to be responsive to the concerns that our neighboring cities had at the airport. That balance is very, very difficult to find. And I'd like the legacy to be that we found a way to find that balance where our customers are satisfied and they're happy, and our neighboring community trust that what we're doing it to mitigate or to reduce the impact that the growth of the airport have on their daily lives.
Well, it's clear you are a strategic planner, you are an innovator, and you're passionate about what you're doing. So I feel good about your chances to leave that legacy.
I have a very great team, so yes.
And you do. You have a great team of folks in Seattle. And we're very grateful for you taking the time to be with us today. And I'm personally grateful for your efforts leading our legislative, our federal affairs, regulatory, and security efforts. So thank you for the time doing that. Thank you for being here today, Lance. And thank you to all of you for tuning in for another one-on-one interview with a newsmaker, Lance Lyttle from Seattle.
Thank you.
Have a great day.